The eighth archetype is the blue man. The blue man. People don't know much about the blue man. Swami Muktananda, the great Hindu saint of the 20th century, had a meditation one day that was the most pivotal moment of his life, he tells us in his autobiography. And this is what happened. In this meditation, he had a vision of a blue pearl, and the pearl morphed into a blue man. And he said from this meditation he learned, first of all, to overcome his fear of death. He had been quite afraid of death, so it broke him through that. But he also learned his an expansion of consciousness. You see, these archetypes all play with each other, you know. So there's obviously a connection between father sky, blue sky, and the blue man. But it is about expansion of consciousness, the blue man is. And it is about creativity, getting in touch with our creativity, and it is about healing, our powers of compassion. Now, what's interesting is that Swami Muktananda had this meditation, and he says it's absolutely the turning point in his life in the 20th century as a Hindu. In the 12th century, Hildegard of Bingen, a Western German Christian abbess, had a similar meditation. And she one day saw a man in sapphire blue, she says. And this was the Christ in sapphire blue, the healing Christ who's in every one of us, she says. And she painted a mandala with him in the middle, and he was like this. Now I invite you to do this. Watch what happens. Do it with me. Do this. Now do it one more time. See, your rib cage is literally rising up, and your heart is being generated. And you're doing is you're putting your heart energy into your hands. That is the archetype of compassion. The blue man is all about compassion. The man in sapphire blue. Our powers of healing, our powers of creativity. And you know, it is our creativity that on the one hand gets us into so much trouble as a species, but it is also our only way out of our trouble as a species. What we have to do, we need an explosion of creativity today to reinvent the way we're living on the planet, especially around issues of energy and fossil fuels, obviously, but also issues like reinventing education and reinventing worship and reinventing the way we're doing healthcare and so forth. So this whole thing about bringing creativity alive and bringing compassion alive, this is honoring, this is responding to the blue man who's in all of us. And let me point out this little detail. Hildegard, when she writes about her vision of the man in sapphire blue, also mentions a pearl. It's amazing. Now you can do some thinking, well, what is this thing about a pearl? You know, well, a pearl, you know, is a jewel of perfection that comes from imperfection. It's an irritation in the oyster, and it's moved. Oysters don't do much moving, as you know. It's moved by the waters, you know. But it's worked on, it's worked over, it's worked over. So there's something being said there about the gross of life, the troubles of life that. But of course, every spiritual teacher, the Buddha, Muhammad, Isaiah, they all are talking about our capacity for compassion. Two more archetypes. One is the fatherly heart. The fatherly heart. Well, I was writing this book, I ran into a woman who told me this story. She said her daughter just had her first baby, and her son-in-law was present for the birth, as so many young parents are these days. And he turned to his mother-in-law, who was the woman I was talking to, at the time of the birth, and said to her, you know, I've never in my life fallen in love so deeply or so quickly as in beholding his newborn child. Now that's a powerful story. It's an archetypal story. For years I've been hearing parents tell me that their mystical moments, the most powerful mystical moments, were the birth of their children. Now we have to tap into that energy more. And we have to realize that this is what carries the fatherly heart. And the fatherly heart is a heart of caring, it is a heart of protecting, it is a heart of training and educating, and it is a heart of adventure, of inviting our children to stretch, to put on those wings, to take chances, and to go to the edge at times. All that is part of the fatherly role. And many men, of course, did not have good relations with their fathers, but that's no excuse. It's no excuse. In fact, it's a challenge. It's an invitation that the buck stops here. That we don't carry on the sins of our fathers, but we take a special look at our fatherly heart. And we find fathers. We do find fathers. Like my father did not have a healthy father. His father was a cripple also. He was struck with polio when he was about 30 and was in a wheelchair, but he also drank as a wife. But my father found some priests in his life who were very important for him in the 30s and kind of kept him on a more or less healthy path and all that. So the point is, and then this is where other fathers have to step up, you know. You don't have to be a literal father to be a father. Every adult male is a father. The politics we choose, the way we interact with the younger generation, obviously if you're a teacher or a counselor or a clergy person or an artist, you are playing a fatherly role. You are bringing your heart to the table. And all those elements of fatherhood come into play. Training, challenging, protecting, nurturing, all that. So fatherhood is much bigger than just literal fatherhood. And we need to really tap into that. And no one is exempt from that fatherly heart. It's one of the most powerful sources we have of energy. Lastly, the grandfatherly heart, the elder. I think we should retire the word retirement. I think it's an obscene word. I think we should replace it with the word refirement. When you come to that time in life, you no longer have to put bread on the table for others. That's really cool. But it doesn't mean you have to spend the rest of your life on the golf course or playing the stock market. Well, that was as of a month ago. Everyone's doing that. But the point is that when that time comes, that we used to call retirement, you're stepping away from your 8-to-5 job or whatever it is. Look for the fire in your heart and in your belly. What do you want to do with your remaining days? What do you want to leave behind? And it's my experience that 95% of older people feel a special allurement with the youngest generation. So there's that grandparent-grandchild relationships that are so valuable. The young today are yearning for elders, and they're not getting them. They need us, and they want us in so many ways. I the last few years, have been working with inner city kids in Oakland, trying to reinvent education with the inner city out. Not one of these kids has a father. Many of them don't have mothers either. They're living with aunts or grandparents or on the street or with one another. These are teenagers in high school. You know, we need to make ourselves present. And it's not, it's not about being geniuses or anything. It's about being real. And it's about being real with our grandfatherly heart. Because the grandfatherly heart, the elder, does have something to offer that the father generation does not have to offer. Because the parental generation is busy running the culture, going to work, and being parents. I mean, it's too much for anybody. And this is why smart cultures, that is those that last longer than 200 years, ours falling apart after 200 years, they assign a lot of the parenting to uncles and to extended relatives. Relatives of an extended family, not to parents. And the Aboriginals in Australia, the same ones who use the didgeridoo, when you're 13 years old or so, your uncle, who is an uncle in terms of the animal totem you received when you were in the womb of your mother and kicked for the first time, kind of a long story, but that's how it happens. So you belong to this whole tribe of totem people. Let's say it's a platypus totem. So some platypus guy comes in and steals you away for 3 years when you're 13 years old to prepare you for your rite of passage. Now, I've taken a sociological survey, and I've met a lot of parents who wouldn't care if their 13-year-olds were stolen for 3 years. It works for everybody. Because as you've learned, parents are the last one 13-year-olds want to talk to. But an uncle from the totem tribe, there's more communication there, you see. So, you know, there's so many ways of doing education and doing parenting. You know, we live in this little box that we think is, what, the #1 country in the world or something? The only way to do it? You know, we have so much to learn. We have so much to learn. So that's kind of the summary of what I'm about here. And I think you'll show, I end the book showing that shame and aggression enter every one of these archetypes. Or to put it differently, the archetype helps cleanse the feelings of not belonging, which is shame, and steer aggression into healthy directions. And so that's kind of a summary of my book, more or less. I apologize if I've gone too long. Hope I didn't talk too much. Okay, what's on your mind now? Yes?
My insurance, I think, covers me asking that, but what about me, and I'm sure you guys and other people have run into the issue of, oh, come on, just suck it up and be a man. And after a while of having people who are supposed to love me, who tell me this, I'd stand there and I'd show them pictures of my children, and I'd drop my pants. I'm going, now, do I qualify? You know, what part of a man do you want me to be, or are you expecting me to be? So here's this stepping into this lovely old crap, trying to figure out.
Okay, he's talking about this phrase that he's heard that really disturbs him about suck it up and be a man. And that, to me, is also echoed in the phrase that men don't cry, right? So notice how that's all about putting on armor, you see. And that's why the spirituality becomes hidden. Because a lot of men have been exposed to shibboleths like that and haven't responded as aggressively as you have, you see. You refused apparently to take it in. But that's part of the mythology that's floating around, you know, that men have to wear armor all the time to prove that they're men. And obviously this is very dangerous because it leads us out of touch with our deepest passions of joy and of moral outrage. And so, you know, we can look to at what's useful in that. Part of what's being said, just part, is that there is this warrior energy that we all need to develop, and it is about being strong, like I was talking about regarding fear of the future, in the future, or regarding issues we're inheriting from the past. But so the strength is important, but as you say, suck it up, or don't cry, don't go into grief. That's extremely dangerous. People who do not deal with their grief, first of all, are stuck in anger, because anger is the first level of grief. But also, they're stuck. There's like a stone in the heart that never gets rolled away. And so we get blocked up. Our creativity gets blocked up when we do not deal with grief. And something we need a lot more of today is grief rituals that allow us to acknowledge how much pain, how many wounds we're carrying inside us. I know I've been developing these, and there are some that are very practical and really work. So it's part of any authentic recovery of the sacred masculine is working on grief issues. Yes?
You mentioned that you have done some work in the open schools. I wonder if you could speak a little more about your experiences there or the responses that you received from students.
Okay. He asked me to talk a little about my work with inner city kids in the Oakland School. I wrote a book, I think it was my last book for this, called The Awe Project, Reinventing Education, Reinventing the Human. It's not a long book. And awe stands for awe. I think we have to begin education again with awe, because awe is what awakens the heart and leads to wisdom. I think we have too many knowledge factories and not enough wisdom schools. The Dalai Lama says education is in crisis the world over. And I find that very comforting. It's not just a California problem, Oakland problem, or American problem. It's a species issue, because you're moving from a modern to a postmodern time, and our forms of education are modern. And they're not working. A lot of kids are rejecting it. 72% of black boys in America today, 72% are not graduating from high school. Now, is this because they're dumb? Or because the adults, the elders, defining the forms of education are dumb, sleeping on the job? I was lecturing a year ago in Napa, and a woman came up, she said, I love teaching, I'm a great teacher, and I'm quitting. And every good teacher I know in my district is quitting. There's no child left behind, she said. None of us became teachers to give an infinite amount of exams to kids. We know we're here to do exactly what you're talking about, to bring wisdom alive and learning alive in kids, and they'll carry it from there. So it's back-asswards. And we've got to, you know, I'm certainly hoping that Obama is going to help shift this whole thing. What I do in that book, besides awe, I break it down. Awe stands for ancestral wisdom education. So wisdom, not just knowledge. And we need wisdom. And wisdom includes cosmology. And then I talk under education the 10 C's to balance the 3 R's. So we know about the 3 R's and computers, which come out of the 3 R's. But the 10 C's are things like cosmology, how we got here and what that is, what it means. Chaos. And of course, whole chaos theory, I've done some work with one of the discoverers of chaos theory who works at Santa Cruz University, Ralph Abrams. And these inner city kids, they're living chaos 24 hours a day. These guys know chaos. And to get some affirmation from science today that God is chaos is in fact a positive dimension to the ecosystems and the planetary movements and all of nature, including our own creativity, that is very good news for them to hear. Another C is creativity. In fact, our whole thing builds around creativity. Just today we had a class, and it was their final class of the semester, and they created DVDs and rap around the most interesting topics. And they did things like, one of them did a thing on muscle cars and its relationship to ecology. And so he created a whole film about it, and his main point was that you can run a muscle car on vegetable oil, you see? And so that's his solution to loving muscle cars, which he loves, and I guess his father's into it too, and he's a mechanic, he's only 16 or so, and the ecological questions. So he dealt with that. Two of them did a film on being homosexual and black and young, and what they've been through regarding that. One did a thing on graffiti. He created a big graffiti sign of chaos. The sign says chaos, but in graffiti language. And he did a film of putting it together, of creating the graffiti, which was great. I've never seen anyone really do graffiti. You know, they usually do it at night when no one's around. So to see it on film is really great. And on a piece of cloth, not on someone's property, you know. Although he was telling me property is much better than a piece of cloth. But, and a couple others did theirs on turf dancing and so forth. And they did some of the history of it and stuff. So it was really great. So my thesis is that, first of all, there's an incredible amount of creativity in the young, and especially inner city young, and it's not being tapped into at all. In fact, One fellow who was in our program last semester, who's a senior, said this is the first time in 4 years of school, high school, that I've ever been asked to do anything creative or with my imagination. First time he's about to leave school. So, you know, this is what's missing. Creativity is what distinguishes us as a species. And it's nowhere to be seen in No Child Left Behind. There's a scientist at Stanford who told me a year ago, when I told him what I was doing, he said, you know, it's great you work with inner city kids. My son went to Palo Alto High School. He hated it, and I hated it. And it's a very privileged high school. So what you're doing is not just for inner city kids. Other kids need this too. He said kids today don't need the fax. They can get fax on an iPhone or any time they want. He said they need what you're talking about. They need values and the excitement of learning and how to steer their imaginations into productive directions. So I'd also been working with Morehouse College, which is Martin Luther King's alma mater. And they're suffering very much in Atlanta because, check it out, it's a black college for black young men. If 72% of black boys are graduating from high school, their pool is drying up for college boys. 28% of black men are now their pool, and they're not rich at all, so they survive on the basis of tuition. So they're beginning to really get it, that they got to start doing something about what's missing in our school system, or they'll be out of business. So those are a few lessons I picked up. Yeah. Yes?
I've been listening to you bringing us words from a lot of mystics and inventors and researchers, and I'm getting a feeling your purpose is kind of as a messenger. I'm wondering what you think about that.
I'm a messenger. Well, I've been called a lot worse things than that. I'll settle for that. That's nice. And you know, messenger in Greek is angelos. That's where we get the word angel. So that's kind of nice. I'll sleep good tonight. Thank you. Is our time up? Or how about one more question?
Is there an archetype for death?
Pardon me?
Is there a characteristic or an archetype for death?
Is there an archetype for death? Well, that's interesting. The Green Man, I'm sorry I didn't have slide. I have a little DVD program of the Green Man, but several of the Green Men, and you find them all over the cathedrals in the 12th century, are death masks where the Green Man is on the ground with leaves. They're also dying. So it's a great, you see, part of recovering the Green Man is, and rediscovering our relationship with nature, is to rediscover that all nature undergoes a cycle of life, death, and regeneration. And so it is about dealing with death. Remember the Blue Man? Remember that Swami Muktananda had his breakthrough about his fear of death through the Blue Man. And I think that has something to do with the traditions of the soul leaving the body, like smoke. It rises, and it goes into the sky. You see, it's that return to origins. So I think that there are several issues about death. There are also the issue of creativity. You know, Otto Rank, who I consider one of the most brilliant psychologists of the 20th century, says that the artist is one who wants to leave behind a gift. It's a wonderful definition of an artist. But notice what's being said. Leave behind. The artist is aware of his or her mortality. We're all leaving. So what are you going to choose to leave behind? You know, and that's the artist in you. And it may be your children and grandchildren, or it may be many other things, your students or what have you, your patients who you've healed. But so that whole thing about that we're leaving is, of course, getting in touch with the relationship between creativity and death. That our creativity says a lot about our finiteness in this form, in the form that we're in. So I think that there are a number of messages. And obviously the grandfatherly heart, the elder, is more conscious, more present to the door to the other world than we might be at other phases of our life, when we're more caught up in survival. So it's a good question, but I do, the death comes up in a lot of angles on these topics. Yes, sir. One more. Okay. She's got work to do. Okay, one more.
You know, the male-female issue thing.
Yeah.
I feel too like you said how this is a species crisis today.
Uh-huh.
You know, some of the other areas, energy and ecology and so forth. But the male-female thing, I know this woman. I feel like we're soulmates, and yet I feel that she is so accomplished and so successful in the world in so many ways, but she's got this kind of distorted development of the masculine in her.
Uh-huh.
And it's like it's overly aggressive, overly competitive, and the feminine is. And then I read it in your book where you said that women tend to, or is it both genders, we tend to want to go escape up the chakras. Mm-hmm. and leave our lower chakras and deny that. And she says, well, I've already done that. I've already been through the sexual experience. Now I'm just working on my spirituality. That's no longer a part of my life. And you know what I mean? I think it's universal. It's not just, I don't think this is a unique, an exceptional example. Can you speak to that at all? A little more?
Well, I'm feeling our need to move on too. So anyway, the gentleman is talking about a woman friend of his who he thinks is kind of, he was very accomplished, maybe too accomplished, and he thinks has taken on too much of the distorted masculine, really. And he thinks that this is pretty common, right? Is my kind of summarizing?
At least there's a sense of kind of an anger and subconscious.
Anger and so forth, yeah. Well, again, this is where meditation is so primal and so important. See, I call meditation the taming of the reptilian brain, because you see, reptiles are not good at bonding. That's not their thing. They're good at solitude. A crocodile likes to lie alone in the sun. So does a snake, and that's why. That's what meditation does. It gets you in touch with your reptilian brain. Nice crocodile, nice crocodile. It's how you tame your reptilian brain. I say Buddha's genius is putting a leash on the reptilian brain. And I think we all need this to calm ourselves and to calm that reptilian brain. Then the mammal brain, which is the bonding brain and the kinship brain and the compassionate brain that's in all of us, but underdeveloped very often. It can then assert itself much more if the reptilian brain is happy, and then our creative and intellectual cognitive brain can connect more to the compassionate brain and really develop what it means to be community, what it means to be citizen, what it means to be akin and family and lovers and friends. But for that to happen, I think so. To put it bluntly, trick her into doing some meditation, and it might bring some of that healthy feminine and masculine back. So thank you.